Hello, my name is Brian. I own and operate Clear Skies Properties. We're a company that buys and sells vacant land. And as such, it seemed like a good idea to put together some tutorials to post on the blog for people who are interested in buying vacant land and developing it. This tutorial is on the subject of utilities. If you're buying something like an infill lot or someplace close to a developed area, then utilities are pretty simple. You just pay for the hookups for the water and the power, and that's not cheap. It's the water hookups probably going to cost, to have the meter put in, and cost between $5,000 and $7,000. Probably not a lot different for the power hookups, depending on how far away you are from the property. And that brings me to what this tutorial is really about. For people who are not in that situation, who are buying properties that are maybe off-grid, where you're just so far away from utilities that that's just not an option. Or maybe you're sort of an in-between area where maybe you could run power to the property. Maybe you'd be willing to pay that investment, or maybe it's just a better idea to put in solar panels or wind turbines, some other way of getting power and water to your street. You don't need to be a prepper or a survivalist to be interested in this. It's an option that people are increasingly looking to. You can buy vacant land much more affordably than if it's further away from developed areas than otherwise. So you can save a lot of money there and then use that savings for the initial costs of getting set up with the off-grid technologies. And off-grid technologies are improving all the time, and it's becoming more of a thing for people. More and more people are choosing to live off the grid, just because there's certain kind of nice advantages. You're by yourself. Maybe that's not a good thing for you, but for some people it is kind of nice to not have neighbors nearby. You might have a property that's far away from city lights, and so at night the stars are going to be amazing every night. That's kind of nice. And the thing is, you can do that today without sacrificing any of the niceties of city living. And there's a lot of options for that, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. The first thing is power. Of course, power is going to be pretty essential. Electricity, in particular, that you may want to spring for the cost of having your utility company run power all the way out to where you're at. But that can get pretty expensive, and you could easily take that same money and, depending on your needs, set yourself up with some solar panel or combination of solar panel and wind turbines, or maybe just wind turbines, and a battery bank and an inverter, and you've got yourself set up with power. And as long as you've got a good enough setup on a battery bank, you can live pretty easily that way. In a sense, it's free electricity because you're not paying anyone for it, but you have to consider the cost of the initial investment of getting set up with that, and divide it by the number of months that you can count on them living, because every technology is eventually going to break down and need to be replaced. And that would be your actual electrical cost. It may actually be cheaper to be hooked up to the grid. But if that's not an option, having your own supply of electricity that you generate yourself is certainly something to look at. A lot of people think immediately solar panels, which is great. Solar panels are quiet, they're clean, pretty reliable. But if you're in an area sometimes where it's not reliably sunny, you might want to consider doing a combination of solar panel and wind turbines. The problem with wind turbines is that they do tend to make some noise, and so you probably want to set it further away from your property, unless the noise doesn't bother you. Some wind turbines can be a threat to birds, and so you may find some dead birds on your property, which is always unhappy. But the advantage of the hybrid system is that if you do have a lot of overcast days, but if you have strong wind, that's something to look at. Even if you're in an area that doesn't have a lot of sun, you just may need to put a few more solar panels up. So what's the cost, basically, of getting set up with a power system like that? It depends, of course, a lot on your demands, your energy demands. And there's a lot of things, of course, you can do to reduce your energy demands. If you're going to be building your house, which you would if you're buying vacant land, don't spare any expense on the insulation. go ahead and max out all the insulation. That just makes common sense. It's just a penny saved here to save $1 later. It allows for great efficiency. But I mean, there's LED bulbs. If you trying to cut down on your electricity consumption, you're going to have a propane tank likely. You can make sure that your oven and your clothes dryer run on propane. And you can actually really reduce your energy consumption significantly. The biggest, of course, consumption of electricity is going to be an air conditioning system. And if you're somewhere where you're going to need an air conditioning system, like if you're going to be building out in the middle of the Mojave Desert or someplace, you're obviously going to need to have some way of cooling the house. But I would seriously consider looking into some of the evaporative coolers, not necessarily the old style of the 4 panels on the box on the roof, but that you probably have seen plenty of. But there's other technologies, other designs where there's just a single pad and it's like 8, 10, or 12 inches thick. Those do a remarkable job of cooling. You can get through summer in the middle of the desert quite comfortably with those, the exception being if a tropical storm sweeps through, and those few days when there's high levels of humidity, the evaporative cooler isn't going to work as well. They also, you're constantly filtering the air and cutting down on your dust inside your house. So some people just really don't like swamp coolers or evaporative coolers. I would really consider it because it's going to really reduce your demand for electricity. But if you really are insistent on definitely going to have an air conditioner, you're going to need considerably more solar panels and a larger battery bank, because air conditioners, or maybe just for whenever you're planning on running the air conditioner, if it's not that often, just count on running your house generator to supply that extra electricity for when you do need the air conditioner. And bringing me to the subject of house generators, that's always a good idea. A lot of people don't need a house generator. They just design their system so that it's perfectly adequate for their needs, and they never need the generator backup. But you might want to, they're not that expensive, maybe $400 or $500, and you can get a whole house type generator that'll run on propane from your propane tank, and that can produce quite a lot of electricity for those surge times, or just as a backup in case you have too many days in a row of no sun or no wind. Those are, you yourself set up with a system like that depending on your demand for energy. But if you're a family of 4 with modest energy consumption, because you've taken the pains of insulating and using LED bulbs and such, you can easily get away with a system that is going to run maybe $20,000, $15,000 to $20,000. But you also got to consider you're going to get a tax rebate that could be as much as like $6,000. I mean, you're going to get a big tax deduction because the government, of course, is trying to encourage renewable technologies for obvious reasons. So that's a big tax incentive. And once you've got it in place, that covers your electrical needs. So it is doable. It's not necessarily cheaper than if you're living in the city and you're just paying the local utility company, but it is completely doable. It's certainly an option worth considering, especially if you're in one of those situations where, gosh, the nearest utility pole is 500 feet away. Do I really want to pay the utility company that much money? That's going to cost a lot of money. Maybe I'll just get set up with an off-grid solution. Never been a better time for it. So you'll need, like I said, the solar panels and possibly a wind turbine, an inverter, which changes the current for your household use, and you need a battery bank. And there's 2 different kinds. There's the lead, the old style lead flooded batteries, and then there's the newer style lithium. Lithium is better. It just is. It holds electricity better. It's more reliable. It'll last longer. It is more expensive up front. So something to consider when you're looking at that. I'm going to show you a couple systems here. These are companies. I'm going to show you some companies here. I don't necessarily recommend them. I don't have anything against them. But here you go. Our homestead 15-panel off-grid system. It's an entire system. They're saying that's going to cost $10,000. The lodge, their 24 panel, they're selling that for $20,000. Maybe it's just you, or the weekend, or maybe it's just a holiday place. $3,800 for their package. It's pretty doable, if you ask me. Here's another company. And there's what they'll call their homestead solar system. They're listing it for around $20,000 for the whole package. And then there's some companies that'll basically sell you the kit and allow you to do it yourself. And you can save about half the cost if you do all the labor yourself. So these aren't one of those companies, but here you go. Their tiny home package, $32.95 for a whole package. I mean, this is completely doable if you ask me. Nothing's free, but it's kind of nice being set up in the middle of nowhere in an unspoiled area. The next thing that you're going to need is obviously going to be water. And the most obvious solution to that is a well. And wells are expensive. They're big upfront costs, but if you work it into the cost of your building loan, let's say, or if you finance it in some way, you just got to figure that your monthly payment on that's going to be your water bill. It depends on where you are in the country. Some places in the country, well isn't that very expensive. Wells are, I was just talking to someone the other day who said in Colorado, you can hit water around 40 feet in some areas. That's real shallow. I'm here in California where you never find water less than 200 feet. And sometimes 400 and 500 feet. In some places, it's just prohibitive. It's just, you have to consider, especially if you're buying a piece of vacant land on the top of a mountain. Really nice, you think, to put your well in the top of this mountain, but you have to go perhaps quite a ways, and it may be absolutely prohibitive to drill a well. And wells are expensive, and you never really know, and any driller will tell you this if you talk to a driller, and I would recommend you just do a Google for well drillers in the area where you're looking at buying a property, and just ask them, what's the water situation like in that area? Kind of give them a general idea of where you're looking at buying a parcel and what might be involved. What's the water table like out there? They can never really give you a definitive answer, but maybe can give you a general feel for what you'd be looking at. And you never know. That's the thing with wells, is that you could drill and you can hit rock, and you might find that it gets very difficult. You might find that you'll hit water around 200 feet but not really enough water. You need to really go another 100 feet to get the volume of water and the quality of water that you need. And that's just it's one of those things. They may tell you up front what roughly you're looking at, but you'll never know until it's actually done. And you could even end up in a situation where the water quality is poor. So most of the time, especially if you talk to people in that area, what's your water situation like? What's the quality of water like out here, and so forth? And even if you do run into poor quality water, you can filter it. And there's new technologies on the end of filtering. I was just reading the other day about a new technology that'll take heavy metals right out of the water, and very efficiently and inexpensively. That's not really on the market yet, but these sorts of things are being developed all the time. But wells, where I'm at, you're not going to get a well for less than $25,000. Other parts of the country, wells are going to be a lot less. That's just not sure exactly why there's such a disparity in the cost of wells, but talk to someone who drills wells in that area, so you know what you're getting into ahead of time. That's just part of due diligence, I would say. But honestly, wells aren't the only possible solution. If you're too far away from city water, and I should say, if you're too far away from city water, there's always the question of, will I have legal rights to drill water? If you're that far away, pretty much it's a given. Even if somebody reserved water rights for that parcel 75 years ago, and it still technically stands, they say it's only a problem if somebody makes it a problem. If you're somewhere where that's the only option, yeah, you're going to just do it. That's what I would do. But there are other alternatives. The other alternative is to have a cistern put in, which is a large plastic tank designed for holding potable water. And they're not too expensive. A big one that would serve for your family's needs probably going to cost $1,200. And they can be put up on a platform so that it'll provide the water pressure in the house. Or they can be buried also if you don't mind using a pump to provide the water pressure. And then you could have somebody come out. There are companies that'll deliver water to sites, and they'll come out and they'll bring their truck out. You need to find out if that's what you're looking at. You need to find out if that's even doable in your area. The county where I live, it's not. It used to be years ago that you could. Now you can only do that if the water is for livestock. I'm not sure why they made that change, but no company will drive out and deliver. You can go and get the water yourself if you don't mind driving it yourself. If you have a truck for that, that would be up to you. But that's an option. Another option that's come about recently, depending on your demands for water, how much water you actually need, are what's called resident or atmospheric water generators. Basically, they're devices that take water out of the air, because there's, of course, water in the air all the time. And these devices can extract the water from the air, purify it, and provide you with water. They run on energy, just like a well, of course, is going to run on energy as well, because you have to have a water pump. But these will require energy as well, about as much as like a home entertainment system for kind of a standard unit. And they'll provide you with water at a lower volume of water, and it does depend on the level of humidity where you're at. Most areas, most of these, they're different. There are two principal different kinds of technologies for these devices, but they will work with as little as 35% humidity, which is below average. That's a pretty dry area. So if you're in an average area, most average areas is like 45, 50% humidity. You would be able to run these, and depending on how much water there is in the air, they extract the water from the air. This is mostly something that would be of interest if you're talking about a holiday property that you're only planning on being out there like on the weekends. And this device can run continuously off of solar panels. So it's running all week long, filling up your cistern. And so when you get out there on the weekends, the cistern is full and you have all the water you need. And these cost considerably less. Something like that might cost around $6,000, $7,000. Maybe a little bit more if you're going to, for the solar panels to run it. But if your demands for water are lower, that you don't really need a well, and it's something that you're going out there so many days a week, you may find that that's able to provide you with all your water at considerably lower expense than a well. So it's something to look at. You can just Google just residential atmospheric water generators. Here, I'll show you a couple. This one's more of an expensive one. This is a Eco Blue 1000. Again, I don't promote any of these. I'm just letting you know about this. And this one, I think it produces, what do they say, 32 gallons of water a day. And typically a family uses about 180 gallons of water a day. So obviously you need a few of those, and that's going to get pretty expensive, and a well would be cheaper. But if your demands for water are not that great, maybe it's something to consider. Especially, if it's just you and you're not going to be using all that much water. Here's another company. This is one they're advertising at $6,500. And it makes, they say, 250 liters per day, to 5,000 liters per day. I guess if you're in a very humid area, it could produce up to, so that's their range, 250 to 5,000, pretty broad range. For 6,500 for a unit like that. It's just something to have in your arsenal to think about as being a, something you might want to consider. And you can look at these technologies only improving from here. Be a little bit careful. There are a lot of off-grid communities. If you just go online to Google off-grid living, you'll find there's a lot of different communities of people who kind of get together and chat about these things and share information. And sometimes you'll run into things like when there was one particular technology that was supposed to be very like $250, and you stick it in the ground and it produces water. And I really don't think it's going to work. It doesn't make any. It just I seriously doubt that technology that they have crowdfunding right now. It's not going to work. It's just there's no way it's going to develop. So you have to use your own wisdom. You have to use your put on your own critical thinking cap and really evaluate some of these claims that some people make. Just be careful. But you have options. Trash and sewer, as far as trash goes, a lot of places will let you burn your own trash. And yeah, you may have to haul your trash out. And that's just, maybe you want to make sure you have a truck or a trailer or something like that, because somehow or another, the trash is going to need to be gotten off the property. There's not a lot of clever technologies on something like that. But yeah, you just have to consider the fact that you're going to have trash and you're going to have to do something with it. Maybe you're in an area that's going to let you incinerate it, burn it once a week. I know a lot of places in the country where you can do that and some places where you can't. So you have to look into that. As far as sewer goes, most off-grid places, if you're living off-grid, the septic tank is the obvious thing to do for getting rid of your fluid waste. There's number of options with that. Most places are quite amenable to the use of a septic tank. It's only when you're dealing with a property that's on a very steep grade, like over 30%, I think it is, where you might start running into problems with a septic tank, or if there's a lot of clay in the soil, or if you're near a pumping station, or if you're near a river or a lake. Those are situations where you might not be able to put a standard septic tank in. So keep that in mind. But there's always a way of dealing with it. Even if you can't use a standard septic tank for getting rid of your sewer, there will be other technologies. They're just going to be more involved and more expensive. Another option to consider is since you're building your own house there, to construct the plumbing in such a way so that it separates the gray water from the black water. The gray water, of course, being just the water that that goes down the drain at the sink when you're washing your hands and such, or from the shower. That water can be used. A lot of people, if you set it up properly, you can use that water for not going into the septic tank, but for irrigating some plant life around your house. You can just run it off separately, so you don't need as big of a septic tank, and it also helps to keep green a fire break area, around your house. You can have plants or even a garden. A lot of people, it's beyond the scope of this tutorial to talk about that, but it's certainly an option. But you just need the smaller tank in that instance for the black water, which would be from the toilets, of course. But that's common enough. A septic system usually runs between, for a house of 4 or something like that, is usually $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. It's all expensive, but building a house is expensive. That's why you need a builder's loan. The internet has become just a reality. It's a utility at this point. It's kind of hard to go off the internet in this day and age. It just means so much for so many people. And if you are living in an off-grid setting, it's probably because you have a job that allows you to. Either that or you're retired, but you may have a job that allows you to live off the grid because you can work off of the internet. So you're definitely going to need the internet. And there's, of course, ways of doing that with the satellite. It's not actually very expensive, actually. There's a number of companies that will provide direct internet to off-grid locations. Hughes is the biggest company, but there's other companies. They're pretty affordable. Their packages are like around $60 a month. And if you want to lease the equipment that's used, then you could add another $15 a month. But you have the internet. It's a quality internet, not really this kind of speeds that you would need for like internet gaming. If you're doing gaming that requires a lot of graphics, you're probably going to be disappointed. But if your needs are less than that, you can stream movies, for example. And then, of course, there's always been the satellite dishes for just watching movies and TV. That technology's been around for a very long time, and it's pretty affordable. And, of course, you can also run your phone in the same way, off of the same technologies. You can have a VoIP phone service and cover all your phone needs that way. Another option, something to think about, is just if you're in an area where maybe you're off grid, but you do have good cell connection where you're able to talk on the phone. I'm trying to get my glasses straight here. Where you're able to have a good phone conversation, you could use that as a hotspot for your internet needs. And one technology, if you're in an area where maybe the cell reception is more optional, something like this. This is a booster, and they actually do work. These are actually effective. They do increase your cellular phone signal. So you're further away, you can put one of these in your house. This one here sells for under $400, and it also gives you a stronger signal for using your phone as a hotspot. So that's another option for internet. And here is just HughesNet. Again, I don't recommend any of these companies in particular. I'm sure they're all fine, as far as I know. But just letting you know what sort of things are out there. So you can have the internet. I mean, that's just amazing to me, that you can be in a location just out in the middle of nowhere where there's just nobody around you, and you can just see a road way off in the distance, and you still can hop on the internet and stream something or talk to somebody on the other side of the planet. The technology is just amazing to me. If you're young, you probably think nothing of it, but if you're someone like me, it's still pretty amazing. And then the last utility would be gas. You're going to need to have gas more than likely, especially for heating, running the ovens and stoves, and that's a pretty simple one, actually. There's a really low cost because you've seen it when you're in rural areas where somebody has a tube or a ball-type steel tank next to the house, and that's their propane tank. They don't own it, more than likely. There's companies that own those, and they lease them to you, and then they'll come out once a month and fill it up. And provided there's an access to where they can get their truck onto your property, they'll fill it up. And there you've got your gas, and the gas can be used for heating and for running the clothes dryer if you have a clothes dryer, or maybe you just want to run clothes dryer. When we were kids, we just put them on a line. Worked perfectly well. So, but that's an easy one. Actually, the internet and the gas are pretty inexpensive. The water and the power are going to require some initial investments, but they're completely doable. It really is, especially when you consider against the options. It's completely doable. You're going to save a bucket load of money by buying a piece of land way in the boonies, and you can use those savings to help make these initial investments. So there you go. Living off-grid isn't just for preppers and people on the lam, escaping the law, or survivalists. It can be just somebody who likes a little bit of serenity, would like to have dark skies at night. It's an increasingly attractive option. More and more people are doing it. Check out some communities online. You'll find lots of people talking about these and the way they've done it, things that have worked for them, things that maybe haven't worked so well. So that's it. Just wanted to throw this out there. I know it's kind of a long video. Hopefully it was able to maintain your interest. That's it. This is Brian again from Clear Skies Properties. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.